In the frozen heart of New York City, 12-year-old Lisa, a homeless girl surviving on subway grate heat, belts out Elton John's Your Song with a voice scraped raw by hunger and loss. When the music legend himself stops, not to pity her, but to hear the jagged truth in her flat notes, her life detonates. A recording studio invitation, viral headlines screaming Elton's Street Muse, and a ticket to Madison Square Garden. But fame is a knife. Paparazzi dissect her past, producers demand she clean up the grit, and in her coat pocket burns a community college scholarship, a lifeline to normalcy. Can a girl raised on her mother's opioid lullabies and cop sirens outsing the ghosts chasing her? And when the final chord fades, what remains? The roar of a crowd or the quiet hum of a classroom? Stay tuned to witness how her story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. New York in December was a beast with iron bones. Its frost didn't bite. It gnawed, relentless and personal, as if the city itself resented the warmth of human breath. Steam rose from subway grates in ghostly tendrils, and somewhere near the one on 59th and Broadway, a girl's voice clawed its way through the din of honking cabs and Christmas shoppers. It wasn't pretty, not the kind of sound that made strangers pause for reverent Instagram stories. This was raw, a serrated edge of a thing, like glass dragged across asphalt. I hope you don't mind that I put down in words. Lisa's boots were duct-taped at the soles, her coat a patchwork of thrift store rejects layered over a threadbare hoodie. She stood atop the grate, not for the heat, though her toes had long since numbed, but because the rising steam lent her voice a raspy vibrato she couldn't fake. Her mother had taught her that steam's free reverb, baby, she'd say, humming into the kettle's mist during the bad winters before the fentanyl took her. Now, Lisa's gloves, fingerless, fraying, clutched a damp cardboard sign. Anything helps. The T had bled into the H, making it look like anything helps had given up halfway. Tourists streamed past, their eyes sliding over her like oil on water. A man in a Canada Goose jacket tossed a handful of quarters into her open guitar case without breaking stride. The coins landed on a torn sheet of notebook paper where Lisa had scribbled lyrics to Elton John's Your Song. A song she'd memorized not from records, but from her mother's off-key renditions while scrubbing burnt pots in their Hell's Kitchen apartment. The paper was soggy at the edges, the words blurred into Rorschach blots. She didn't need it anymore. The song lived in her marrow now, twisted into something darker, a hymn for the invisible. Across the street, beneath the awning of a closed boutique, a man shifted his weight. He'd been there for 7 minutes. Lisa counted by the rhythm of traffic lights, his face obscured by a cashmere scarf and the brim of a fedora. Not unusual in a city of ghosts, but there was something about his stillness that unnerved her. Rich people didn't linger. They consumed the world in swift, efficient bites. Yet here he stood, gloved hands deep in the pockets of a coat that cost more than her mother's entire life insurance payout. She almost missed the tremor in her own voice when she hit the next verse. How wonderful life is, while you're in the world. The line curdled in her throat. Wonderful. What a joke. The world was a freezer aisle, and she was the expired meat no one wanted. Still, she sang it sharp, defiant, turning Elton's earnest melody into a snarl. A middle-aged woman winced, hurrying her child past as if poverty were contagious. The man across the street moved, not toward her, but parallel, tracing the edge of the curb like a man walking a tightrope. His shoes caught the gray light, oxblood leather, unscuffed, the kind that whispered of private jets and hotel lobbies where the ice never melted in your drink. Lisa's jaw tightened. Vulture, she thought. She'd met his type before. Charity case collectors, slumming it for a story to tell at dinner parties. You'll never guess who I found busking today. But then he stopped. Not a hesitant pause, but a full-body arrest, as if the sidewalk had turned to quicksand. His head tilted slightly, the fedora shadowing his face, but Lisa felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. Her voice faltered. She scrambled for the next line, but the words tangled. I sat on the roof and kicked off the moss. And she mangled the rhyme, substituting moss with frost. A hot shame prickled her neck. Stupid. Stupid to care. When she dared to glance up, he was gone. The cold seeped deeper as dusk bruised the sky. Lisa's guitar case held $18.75. Enough for a hot meal if she skipped the hostel again. She was folding the bills into her sock when a shadow fell across the grate. Why flatten the sea? The voice was low, frayed at the edges like a well-worn book. The man stood before her, fedora now removed, revealing a face she vaguely recognized. Not from life, but from a water-stained People magazine she'd once used to insulate her shoes. Platinum curls, round glasses, a jawline softened by age but still stubbornly iconic. Her breath hitched. Elton John said nothing else. He didn't smile, didn't offer cash, just waited, his gaze steady behind the lenses, as if her answer mattered. Lisa's pulse roared. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. Not with him, but with them. The social workers, the cops, the foster dad who'd called her voice a dying cat's last plea. Always the same question. Why can't you just sing it right? She lifted her chin. Why not? A beat. Then, something flickered in his eyes. Not pity, but recognition. The look of a man who'd once been told his hands were too clumsy for piano. Without a word, he knelt, awkwardly, stiffly, and placed a $100 bill in her case. The gesture was practiced, almost clinical, but his fingers lingered on the edge of the cardboard. It's colder up here than it looks, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Lisa followed his gaze to the steam rising between them. It's warmer down there, she shot back, nodding to the subway below. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw his mouth twitch. Then he stood, brushed invisible dust from his coat, and walked away. The bill was crisp, untouched by the city's grime. Lisa didn't spend it. She tucked it inside her mother's old Zippo, a relic from better days, its brass etched with a half-faded Born to Run logo, and pressed it to her chest as she bedded down in the ATM alcove of a Chase bank. The cold gnawed, but the Zippo's metal bit back, a grounding sting. 3 blocks north, in a penthouse suite where the windows didn't rattle, Elton John stared at a Steinway Grand. His fingers hovered above the keys, hesitating. The girl's voice looped in his head. Not the melody, but the anger. The way she'd ripped the song open and let its guts spill. He'd spent decades polishing his craft into diamond precision. But tonight, for the first time in years, he played a wrong note on purpose. It sounded like a door creaking open. The days after the fedora man vanished blurred into a numb rhythm. Lisa kept singing at the grate, but now her eyes flickered to the boutique awning every third breath, as if expecting ghosts. The $100 bill stayed tucked in her mother's Zippo, a talisman she pressed to her ribs when the cold gnawed through her layers. It wasn't money anymore, it was a question. Why flatten the sea? She answered it by sharpening the notes further. By the 4th dawn, her voice had become a weapon. Tourists no longer tossed coins. They quickened their steps, unnerved by the way she turned your song into a funeral dirge. Only the pigeons lingered, bobbing their heads to the dissonance. On the 5th day, a saxophonist set up across the street, his case lined with velvet. He played Sinatra covers, smooth as bourbon, and glared when her rasp cut through his syrup. Ain't no room for alley cats here, he barked during a red light, spit gleaming on his reed. Lisa met his stare. Then why's your sound tin as a gutter? He didn't return. The man in the fedora did. He came at twilight, scarf tighter, shoulders hunched, a rich man's impression of invisibility. This time, he leaned against a newspaper box, head bowed as if praying. Lisa let the song crumble mid-verse. Silence pooled between them, thick and charged. You missed the bridge, he said finally, voice muffled by wool. She kicked her guitar case. It screeched against concrete. Ain't a bridge left in this city that don't lead somewhere worse. He flinched. Good. But he kept coming. By the 3rd visit, she noticed the tremor in his hands. Not from cold, but something deeper. Parkinson's? Nerves? Once, when a siren wailed, he jerked like a startled deer. She catalogued his tells. The way he checked his watch, always at 4:17 p.m., the faint limp favoring his right leg, the smell of bergamot and nicotine that clung to him, foreign amidst the stench of pretzel carts and exhaust. On the 7th day it snowed. Fat, wet flakes that melted into her collar. The fedora man arrived earlier, clutching a paper cup. He set it on the edge of her grate. Steam curled from the sip-hole hot chocolate, the real kind with a drift of whipped cream. Lisa stared at it. "What's the price?" "None." His scarf slipped, revealing a crescent of weathered skin. "Everything's got a price." He adjusted the scarf. "Then play the bridge." She didn't touch the cocoa. But when she sang, "I Sat on the Roof," she let the note tremble, raw as the night her mother's fingers had gone slack around a spoon. The fedora man didn't stay to hear the end. That night, in the flicker of a bodega sign, Lisa unfolded the memory she'd buried deepest. 10 years old, crouched behind a couch as her mother swayed to Benny and the Jets, hypodermic needle glinting on the windowsill. "Come on, baby, sing with mama." Her voice slurry, sweet. "Don't you want to be a star?" Lisa had hidden her face in a threadbare curtain, humming the tune into the fabric. When the sirens came, they found her still humming, her mother cold beside a shattered vinyl record. The Zippo burned a hole under her shirt. The fedora man brought sheet music on the 12th day, photocopied pages of border song with handwritten annotations. "Try harmony here," scrawled in margin. "Let it break here." Lisa let the papers soak in gutter sludge. "I don't take requests." "It's not a request." He retrieved the sheets, blotted them on his coat. "It's a duet." "Ain't your kind's duets just fancy lies?" He stilled. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Eyes hollow as a stripped piano, mouth a tight line. Then he laughed, a sound like rusted hinges. "The best ones are." She took the music. Rain came. The saxophonist returned with an umbrella and a sneer. "Heard you got a sugar daddy." Lisa thumbed the Zippo in her pocket. "Heard you still sound like a kazoo." He spat near her boots. "Stars don't shine on roaches." She sang louder. That night, under a scaffolding skeletal shelter, she traced the annotated notes. The fedora man's handwriting looped and jagged, mirroring her own scrawl on discarded receipts. "Harmony here." She tried it, a low growl beneath the melody. It sounded like two wolves circling. When she looked up, he was there, shoulders dusted with rain. "Closer," he said. She bared her teeth. "To what?" "The edge." He left a pair of gloves, black leather, too large, folded over her guitar case. She burned them in a trash can, watching the fingers curl like dead spiders. The next morning brought frost and a tabloid headline. Elton's Lost Week. Paparazzi shots of the fedora man ducking into a subway station. Lisa stared at the grainy photo, the limp, the scarf, and laughed until her ribs ached. But when he appeared at 4:17 p.m., she threw the paper at his chest. "Famous ghost, huh? What's next?" "Autographs." He let it fall. "I preferred rich asshole." "You're both." "Often." He knelt, ignoring the slush seeping into his trousers. "The bridge. You're still avoiding it." She gripped the Zippo. "Why you care?" His glasses fogged. "Because I wrote it running from worse ghosts than yours." Cab honked. A tourist snapped a covert photo. Lisa spat on the ground between them. "Play it yourself." He did. Right there, kneeling on the sidewalk, voice cracking on, "Holy Moses, let us live in peace." It wasn't the radio version. It was a plea, stripped of glitter. When he finished, her cheeks burned. Not from shame, but rage. "You don't get to be human here." "Too late." He stood, knees popping. "Tomorrow." The bridge. She stayed long after he left, throat raw from silence. That night, frost etched flowers on the Zippo's brass. Lisa pressed it to her lips and whispered the bridge. Just once. Tasted like blood and bergamot. The studio door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the city's growl. Lisa froze, her boots leaving grimy half-moons on polished oak. The air smelled wrong. Vanilla sanitizer and anxiety sweat, not the familiar reek of urine and fried dough. Elton hovered near a mixing board, fingers drumming arrhythmically against his thigh. She'd never seen him without the fedora. His hair, thinner up close, clung to his scalp like frost on dead grass. "Shoes off," muttered a technician, eyeing her duct-tape soles. She kept them on. The room was a spaceship. Blinking lights, leather couches, a grand piano floating on casters. Lisa gravitated toward the fire exit, its red sign humming like a trapped wasp. Elton said nothing, just nodded at the piano bench. A test. She approached as one might a sleeping predator. The Steinway's lid gaped open, teeth like hammers poised. Her reflection in the black lacquer wavered, smaller than she felt, all matted hair and defiant chin. She pressed middle C. The note bloomed, rich and smug, reverberating in her molars. "Play the bridge," Elton said. Her spine stiffened. The annotated sheet music lay on the rack, but she shoved it aside. "Your way's boring." A sound engineer snorted. Elton silenced him with a look. Lisa played the opening bars of Border Song, but warped, minor key, tempo dragging like a corpse. She sang through her nose, mocking his original cadence. "Holy Moses, let us rot in." The engineer reached for the mute button. Elton's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "Let it breathe." By the second chorus, Lisa's voice frayed. The piano fought her, its perfect tuning a judgment. She slammed the keys, discordant, until her palms burned. Silence rushed in, vacuum-tight. Elton limped to an ancient Wurlitzer in the corner. He played 4 notes, a child's nursery rhyme, simple. Then again, syncopated. A third time, blues-inflected. Lisa recognized the mutation, her own mangled bridge, refined. "Steal it," he said. "I dare you." She did. They spiraled for hours, melody fracturing and reforming. He mirrored her spite. She absorbed his flourishes. The engineer stopped taking smoke breaks. At some point, takeout arrived, sushi in geometric boxes. Lisa ate with her hands, wasabi burning the ghost of hunger from her throat. Elton ignored his, a cold salmon roll bleeding onto the piano's veneer. When security dragged in a paparazzo caught scaling the fire escape, Lisa finally understood. The cameras weren't here for him. Nightfall brought snow globe stillness. Elton drove her back to Columbus Circle in a Range Rover that reeked of eucalyptus. He didn't ask about her hostel-less nights. She didn't mention the Polaroid on his dashboard. A young man with 70s curls, eyes hollowed by fame. "Tomorrow," he said as she exited, "we burn it down." She thought he meant the song. The next morning's tabloids disagreed. Elton's street rat prodigy, screamed the Post, alongside a photo of her scowling at the Wurlitzer. Her hoodie's grease stains looked like continents on the grainy print. Tourists swarmed the subway grate, iPhones poised. "Sing the viral one," demanded a teenager in juicy couture. Lisa vomited into her guitar case. The studio that afternoon was a bunker. Blackout curtains, security patting down producers. Elton handed her a hoodie, his, from the '76 tour, smelling of mothballs and weed. "They'll chew you," he said, adjusting her mic stand. "But spit you out. You'd know." His fingers stilled. Yes, they recorded take after take. Lisa's voice hardened, each note a shield. During playback, she heard it. The exact moment she'd glanced at him, her sneaker brushing his cane. Vulnerability seeped through the cracks. "Scrap it," she demanded. Elton lit a cigarette, violating 6 no-smoking signs. "That's the one." At midnight, he played her a demo from '83, a ballad abandoned mid-chorus. "Too raw," he said. The tape hissed where he'd wept. Lisa retrieved the Zippo from her boot, flicking it alive. "Raw's all I got." He eyed the flame. "Then let's start the fire." The session bled into days. She learned his tells. A twitch before hitting falsetto, the way he hummed Bach during smoke breaks. He dissected hers, how she hid tremors by scowling, that her left pupil dilated on high GS. They fought. Oh, how they fought. She called his chord progressions geriatric. He mocked her vibrato as pubescent. Once, she threw a MIDI controller. It left a dent in the shape of her rage. Through it all, the tape rolled. Rain lashed the streets when they emerged, masters in hand. A limo idled, but Lisa walked. Elton didn't protest. She hit the subway grate at 3 a.m., throat scraped raw. The steam swallowed her scream-rasped lullaby. He found her there at dawn, asleep against the NO parking sign. The masters gleamed in her grip. Madison Square Garden, he said, not ungently. She dreamt of spotlights. Soundcheck day smelled of pyro and dread. Backstage, a college acceptance letter waited in her donated coat. Juilliard, full ride. She traced the embossed seal, feeling nothing. Elton appeared, holding 2 tickets. For your ghosts. Lisa pocketed them. They'll hate this. Good. His cane clicked toward the stage. Hate means they're listening. The crowd roared. Somewhere a Zippo sparked. The city's hunger shifted. No longer content with gnawing bones, it craved spectacle. Headlines bloomed overnight. Elton's street muse or manipulation? Their ink smearing across subway platforms where Lisa once sang. Paparazzi swarmed Columbus Circle. Lenses pointed at the empty grate like snipers. A tourist's TikTok of her retching went viral. The comments a carnival of concern and cruelty. She's faking. Someone get that kid rehab. Lisa vanished. Not into the subway's belly, but deeper. Abandoned tenements near the Hudson. Their windows boarded with plywood and ghosts. She slept in a nest of shredded Billboard magazines. Elton's face peering up from torn pages. The Zippo's flame became her confessional, flickering over Juilliard's acceptance letter until the edges charred. Talent isn't a roof, the social worker had said years ago, peeling her from her mother's stiff embrace. Now the words echoed with each rat's scuttle across broken glass. Elton's team sent scouts. Men in tailored coats left gift baskets by the grate, protein bars, cashmere scarves, a demo track titled Resilience. She used the scarves as kindling, the demo as a plate for half-eaten pizza crusts. At night, she sang into the tenement's echo, her voice ricocheting off mold-stained walls. Holy Moses, let us rot in peace. The backlash brewed darker. A podcast dissected her privileged ruin, mocking the hoodie she'd worn at the studio. Homeless chic, they sneered, auctioning replicas online. Elton's label threatened to pull funding. His manager hissed about liability over cigars at Sardi's. Through it all, Elton stalked the streets, cane tapping a Morse code only he understood. He found her stash of tabloids in a dumpster, her face circled in red Sharpie. Fraud. Rain slicked the night he cornered her under the Manhattan Bridge. She was huddled in a stolen delivery bike's cargo hold, humming a lullaby her mother once choked on. His shadow loomed, fragmented by graffiti. They're playing our track, he said, voice stripped of its growl. She didn't look up. Your track. A phone glowed between them, Spotify stats blooming like poison ivy. Border Song, Rebirth, trended alongside Elton Exploitation. Yours too, he insisted. She hurled a bottle. It shattered near his Oxfords. You don't get to name what's mine. He left a backstage pass in the bike's basket, its laminate gleaming under streetlight. Madison Square Garden's logo smirked up at her. Dawn brought vultures. A documentary crew ambushed her near Port Authority. Mike shoved like a blade. Is it true you're a paid actor? Lisa spat on their lens. The clip trended. Memes sprouted, her face photoshopped onto Les Mis posters. Captioned, Look Down 2.0. Elton watched from his penthouse, mute. The Polaroid of his younger self trembled in his hand. 1974, backstage at Dodger Stadium, eyes hollowed by cocaine and claustrophobia. He'd burned that suit, but the ghosts lingered. Now they wore Lisa's sneer. His manager barged in, waving a contract. We cut her loose or the garden cancels. Elton played the Wurlitzer instead, fingers stumbling through Skyline Pigeon. The demo tape from '83 spun silently, its unheard chorus a scar. Lisa dreamt of cages. First her mother's arms, rigor mortis tightening. Then the studio, its soundproof walls pulsing. Now the tenement's carcass. She woke to a busker's accordion wheezing your song outside. His hat overflowed with pity dollars. The garden pass crinkled in her fist. She followed the East River, its currents swallowing sirens and screams. At the loading dock, security sneered. Dressing rooms that way, princess. Inside, velvet ropes sectioned off reality. A stylist waved mascara. We're grunge chic tonight. Lisa locked herself in a stall, knees to chin. The Zippo's flame danced with her mother's voice. Stars don't eat for free, baby. Elton found her via cigarette smoke seeping under the door. He slid a photo through the gap, Polaroid, faded. A woman with Lisa's wild hair and eyes, clutching a Zippo. Eleanor, 1999, scrawled on the back. Her scream cracked mirrors. The crowd's roar was a living thing, rabid for redemption. Elton took the stage alone, spotlight carving his silhouette. This one's for the ghosts, he rasped, fingers finding the opening chords. Lisa watched from the wings, Eleanor's photo jammed in her boot. The first verse was a grenade. Turn me round. His voice splintering on the high note. She stepped into the light. The mic trembled. She let it fly away.
No growl. No snarl.
Just a girl, broken and blazing. Somewhere a Zippo sparked. Then thousands. Madison Square Garden breathed. Its vaulted ribs expanded with the buzz of 20,000 voices. A beast fed on sequins and smartphone glare. Backstage, Lisa pressed her palm to the concrete wall, feeling the building's pulse thrum through decades of etched graffiti. Tour dates, band names, desperation made permanent in Sharpie. A roadie shoved past, walkie-talkie screeching. Somewhere, a pyrotech tested flames that hissed like the subway grate's steam. Elton's cane tapped behind her. He smelled of adrenaline and Bengali, his tuxedo swallowing what little light seeped through the curtain cracks. Without turning, she knew his jaw was clenched. The same tension as when they'd argued over key changes, when she'd called him a glorified jukebox. Now he extended a hand, gloved, trembling. They'll want your blood, he said. Give them light instead. She touched the Zippo in her boot, its brass warmed by Eleanor's photo. The college ticket rustled in her coat, a sound like dried leaves, like her mother's last breath. The announcer roared Elton's name. The stage was a glacier. Lisa squinted into the glare, spots bleaching her vision to static. Elton's piano intro began, not your song, but the abandoned '83 ballad. His fingers stumbled, intentionally. A gasp rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the hits. This was autopsy. She stepped forward. The mic stand chilled her grip. Turn me round. Her voice cracked. Not the studio's controlled fracture, but a true break. The sound of ice splitting underfoot. The crowd stilled. Point me home. Elton's harmony entered, frayed and ancient. They'd never rehearsed this. The Wurlitzer's ghost notes shimmered beneath the Steinway, a palimpsest of regret. Lisa closed her eyes. The heat lamps became Hell's Kitchen radiators. The sea of phones flickered into her mother's Zippo flame. She sang to the Polaroid now, to the woman who'd dissolved into city statistics. Burn the maps. Elton's glove snagged a key. Discord rippled. She laughed. The sound, raw and unexpected, shocked the front rows into silence. Then, slowly, a single Zippo sparked. Another. Hundreds. The arena swam in firefly light. Midnight blurred. They tore through Border Song Rebirth. Lisa's sneakers shredding the monitor cables. Elton shed his jacket, his shirt plastered to stooped shoulders. During Skyline Pigeon, she climbed the piano, scattering sheet music like ash. Security lunged. Elton waved them off. Let her fly. Her boots left scuff marks on the Steinway's lid. The encore came unplanned. Elton nodded to the wings. A roadie wheeled out the subway grate, its iron teeth glinting under spotlights. Lisa froze. Your stage, Elton rasped. She knelt. The grate's familiar stench of rust and urine rose to meet her. When she sang your song this time, the steam machine's haze coiled around her throat like a noose turned halo. The crowd wept. She didn't. Afterward, In the antiseptic glow of a green room, Elton uncorked champagne. Lisa eyed the bubbles, each one a tiny explosion. To phoenixes, he toasted. She upturned the bottle into an ice bucket. The liquid pooled around her mother's Polaroid, Eleanor's face warping under vintage Dom Perignon. Elton didn't flinch. They'll offer you everything now. Everything's a trap. He slid an envelope across the counter. Tour dates, private jets, a penthouse lease. Lisa used it to scoop vomit from her boot. Dawn found her atop the garden's roof access ladder, the college ticket flapping in her grip. Below, paparazzi crabs scuttled for gutter quotes. Above, the sky bled tangerine over the Hudson. The Zippo sparked. Eleanor smiled from the burning edge. Stars don't eat for free, she'd said. Lisa ate the ticket. Tasted like futures. The city's dawn arrived as it always did, grudgingly, through a veil of smog and seagull cries. Lisa descended the fire escape, her palms gritty with rooftop soot, the taste of paper still bitter on her tongue. Madison Square Garden loomed behind her, its marquee dark now, the last echoes of applause swallowed by dumpsters lining 33rd Street. She walked without direction, her shadow stretching thin over sidewalks littered with torn ticket stubs and champagne corks. A street sweeper hissed past, its bristles erasing the night's excess. Near Port Authority, a busker's saxophone mourned into the chill. Lisa paused, fingers brushing the Zippo in her pocket. The man nodded, his case sparse with dimes. She dropped Elton's crumpled tour contract beside them, its clauses gleaming under a flickering street lamp. "Play something ugly," she said. He obliged. The Hudson swallowed her footsteps as she reached the piers. Barges groaned in the distance, their loads hidden, relentless. She thought of her mother here once, clutching a brown paper bag of groceries, pointing to the Statue of Liberty's distant torch. "That's for the pretty liars, baby. We got our own light." The Zippo sparked, its flame guttering in the river wind. Eleanor's Polaroid curled at the edges, her smile softening into the haze. A limo crawled alongside her, window lowering. Elton's profile emerged, backlit by the dashboard's glow. He said nothing, just extended a cassette tape through the gap, hand-labeled for the grate, in smudged Sharpie. She took it. The car idled, exhaust mingling with brine. "I'm keeping the piano," she finally said. He chuckled, a sound like gravel under wheels. "It was never mine to give." When the limo merged into traffic, she pressed play on a rusted boombox outside a bodega. The tape hissed, then bloomed. A raw cut of their duet, free of studio polish. Her voice, ragged and real, tangled with his chords. Shopkeepers peered out, broomsticks paused. A delivery cyclist slowed, head tilted. By the time she reached Columbus Circle, a dozen strangers trailed her, lured by the music leaking from cheap speakers. The subway grate exhaled its familiar breath. She knelt, the cassette's gears whirring, and sang. Not Elton's words, not her mother's, but something new. A hum that became a growl, a lullaby that clawed into a war cry. The crowd swelled, tourists and street vendors, their phones forgotten. Coins rained, but she let them lie, tarnishing in the steam. Dusk fell. The crowd dispersed. Elton's piano lingered in the tape's final strains, a question without an answer. Lisa pried open the grate with a crowbar salvaged from a construction site, lowering herself into the subway's humid belly. Rats scattered. Somewhere, a train's roar echoed like applause. She surfaced in Harlem, her voice hoarse, the Zippo's flame guiding her to a storefront church. Inside, a moth-eaten piano hunched beside a pulpit. The caretaker, dozing on pews, didn't stir as she played. The keys stuck, sour notes pocking the hymn Amazing Grace. But she bent them, made them bleed blues. Weeks later, regulars would swear they'd heard a ghost in the rafters that night. But Lisa was already gone, her shadow slipping into the 125th Street station, where a girl with a cracked violin case nodded her over. "Teach me," the girl demanded, eyes flinty. Lisa handed her the Zippo. "Steal it first." The city breathed on, indifferent and alive. Somewhere a grate steamed. Somewhere A piano waited. Somewhere, a flame caught, stubborn and bright, in the dark.